Hey, you came back. It's Rick DiBiasio again, founder of Latitudes Financial Strategies, and today we're going to talk about the big decision. Can I retire? And it starts with a budget, and it usually starts with a back of the envelope calculation. And everybody does it. Everybody who's thinking of retirement takes a pen to paper one day when they've had enough of their boss or they've had enough of an irritating customer, and they say, can I get the heck out of here? And they just look at their expenses versus their retirement projected income, and they make a determination. And that's when they usually call me, either because it works and we're ready to go, or it doesn't work. How do we get there? Well, I want to take you under the hood a little bit and show you how that all works and how you can make this determination yourself. I'm going to warn you, we have a little bit of math in here, but I do it all for you. You don't have to do it. But I'm going to show you how we do it, because we're going to end this session with you having a pretty good sense of whether you can retire or not, at least financially. Remember, we talked about the happiness part. You've got to decide if that's something that you can do emotionally and with your lifestyle and whatnot. But in terms of the numbers, I can show you how to get pretty darn close to where you're going to be. So let's take a look. We start with a budget. Now, I have a form, and if you want, I'll send it to you. Just reach out to me and say, send me that expense worksheet. It's something that we use. And I want you to come up with a number of what you think it'll cost you to live the way you want to live. You can make it a dream if you want in retirement. And don't forget, your first years of retirement are probably a little more active than maybe your later years of retirement, although that's not the same for everybody. And if you hate the word budget, I do, and you don't like the idea of living, within a certain number every month, that's okay. Do this anyway. You maybe don't want to get quite as detailed, but this is one of those garbage in, garbage out things. This is an area that my engineer clients love, because numbers, are truth. They define everything. So if you go through an expense worksheet, whether you use mine or you just use your own, or if you have Quicken or something like that, just get me a monthly number of what it costs you to live. Because once we have that number, it's pretty easy to make changes. This number isn't written in stone. It isn't something that we can't change down the road. In fact, we always try to meet with our clients at least twice a year, so that when we do, we have an idea of if these numbers work. Because we always want to know, well, if somebody says, you know what, it turns out during retirement, I'm spending $1,000 less a month than I thought I would. Or the opposite, maybe I'm spending $1,000 more a month than I thought I would. Well, let's account for that. It's not that as an investment guy, I'm worried too much about your budget. I just want a number I can work with. That's all we're looking for here. So give me a number, and then we're good to go. And we can make some magic happen with those numbers. Let me show you. This is fun stuff. First thing I want to know is, do you have an income gap, right? My method of investing in my book, The Retirement Dilemma, is called the bins and gap method of investing. And gap is sort of like, in London, when you're going to get on the train, they say, mind the gap, the space. That space is what we're talking about here. So it's pretty easy. We just take your PRB, your projected retirement budget, and we subtract from that any sources of guaranteed income. Now, I'm pretty strict about what we call guaranteed income here for this purpose of this exercise. And that is, I pretty much only want to look at your Social Security. You can get an estimate of what your Social Security check will be. I want to know if you have maybe a guaranteed payment coming in from a pension, or even an annuity that you have annuitized that has a monthly check coming in. So that's what we call guaranteed income. We can deal with things like rental income and royalties and whatever else you might have coming in a little later in the process. But for right now, I just want this number that I can work with. And it's pretty simple. You either have a surplus or a gap, right? If you have so much coming in and you spend more, then you have a gap. If you have so much coming in and you spend less, then you have a surplus. If you have a surplus, your work is not done. This is just a very simple back of the envelope calculation. But if you have a surplus, then there's a pretty good chance you can retire whenever you want, okay? But let's say that let's use an example we're going to carry through here. We have someone who has a retirement budget of $4,000 a month, and they have $2,300 a month coming in Social Security payments. So that leaves them with a $1,700 a month income gap. Well, how do we work with that? Well, there's a lot of ways you can fill that gap. You can keep working. You can start to take money from investments, or whatever else you can come up with to fill that gap. We're going to talk about right now how we fill that out from investments. And we're still on the part of, can I retire? That's the whole point of this. So If you have the gap, that's okay. Let's see if you have the assets now to cover that gap. So we're going to look at this. Are you funded or unfunded for your retirement? So if you have a surplus, you skip to the front of the line. You're already funded if you have that monthly surplus. Now, of course, things can happen during retirement. That's why we still got to take care of the money. But right now, we're only on the part where you're still working and you haven't decided whether to quit yet. And so we want to get these numbers right. So if we take that monthly gap and multiply it times 12, that's our annual projected retirement gap. And then what I want to do, and using our numbers from the previous example, I want to give you a life expectancy of 100 years old. Now, you may say in my family, we only live to be 80 or 85. That's fine. But if you run out of money at 85 and you live to be 100, then we haven't done a very good job of financial planning. In fact, that's the opposite of financial planning. So let's look at this. And then we say, in this example, say this person's 67 years old. So they have a life expectancy based on 100 of 33 years. So that's quite simple. Then we take that life expectancy and multiply it times that annual projected retirement gap. And that's what gives us our lifetime gap, how much we need to have in the bank or in investments or through future earned income to cover that gap you have on a monthly basis. So in our example, this person that we talked about a minute ago had a $1,700 monthly deficit. Annually, we multiply it times 12, and then we multiply it times 33, and we see that their projected gap for their lifetime is $673,200. So it's pretty simple now. That's the cost of retirement. And in this example, as long as this person has $673,200 in retirement accounts, then they have what we call a funded retirement. Now, we still have to worry about inflation. We still have to worry about unplanned medical expenses and things like that, but we're not there yet. We're only at the point where we're trying to figure out if you've got enough income to support the lifestyle that you'd like to live. And that's always another alternative. If you get to the point where, you want to retire, but you don't have enough money to consider yourself fully funded for retirement, then you can work on the expense side too. You can try to cut down on your monthly expenses. And don't forget, when you're retired, you'll have less work-related expenses, less clothes. You don't have to get lunch out every day if that's what you've been doing, things like that. So you'll find that even transportation costs might go down before we all started working from home anyway, when you were going to the office. So this is, again, sort of a back of the envelope calculation, but there's some magic that can be done with this money, or with these numbers, I should say. Now I want to know what I'm calling right now, very ineloquently, your stay even rate. And what that means is the rate of return you need to maintain your principal. So in our example, this person that had let's say they had a $650,000 IRA account at the start of the year, and they're spending $20,400 a year to meet that gap, right? So I do a little math from there. I subtract the $20,400 from the $650,000. And in the example I gave you, they're spending money or burning it at the rate of 3.24%. So if your burn rate is in line with expected investment returns, then you can pretty much figure that you're going to maintain principal. That's not an investment philosophy. That's not a guarantee about investments. This is just math, okay? And the math says, like I said before, if you spend less than you make, you're going to stay ahead. So if I have this account as an account I have to manage, and I know that at least if we make 3.24% per year, we're probably going to stay ahead of the expenses we have. So again, it's not a final number. There is no final number in retirement planning. We meet frequently to try to go over our expenses and make adjustments so that we make sure we stay ahead of what we're trying to spend. But this is probably the most basic question of the can I retire question, and that is, do I have enough money to make this work in the type of retirement that I envision? So I hope that helped. If you have questions or you'd like to talk more about it or how I did the math, give me a call or reach out through an email. I'll be happy to help you with that. But basically, once you do this calculation, do the budget, you'll be a long way towards deciding if you can afford retirement or not. I hope you can. Thanks a lot. Look forward to talking to you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.